Hello everyone and welcome back to the Great Book of Grudges. My name is Nathan, and as we're all aware, the next DLC is going to feature Khorne, Ogres, and Greenskins. All of them are factions which I wasn't expecting getting any love anytime soon, especially not the Ogres. But hey, it's a welcome surprise nonetheless. Now the biggest shocker of this announcement was that the Greenskins are going to get some love, considering that they've had some pretty decent DLCs. Their rework was also very good. They do feel quite stable as it stands, but despite the fact that the Greenskins have had some decent amount of DLC and FLC, they're actually nowhere near done. I'm surprised that they're in a Lord pack when in all honesty they should be in some culture pack just like Champions of Chaos, but I'll take anything that I can get. So, what we're going to talk about today is what potentially we could see in line with that of Thrones of Decay size, and just a few theories that I do have. I do hope I'm kind of correct, and you'll see my reasoning now. But before anything, a massive thank you to Instant Gaming for sponsoring today's video. As you guys may be aware, I've recently partnered up with Instant Gaming, where you'll be able to buy game keys at a discounted price, which also supports the channel at no extra cost to you. So you'll be able to get stuff like Ghost of Tsushima for 28% off, Mana Lords for 48% off, and even stuff like Elden Ring Shadows of the Erdtree, which is currently at minus 23% off. You'll also be able to pick up a bunch of Total War DLC at a discounted price. Let's be honest, some of those DLCs are quite expensive, so if you can get them cheaper, it's always the best way to go. Not only that, but to celebrate the collaboration, we do have a monthly giveaway going up right now. You don't have to purchase to get into it, and yep, you can actually pick the game of your choice. This random draw is happening in 14 days, so you've got plenty of time to sign up and get started. Again, thank you to Instant Gaming for the sponsor and the giveaway, as it's always quite nice to work with a company that I've used before, and this is one that I do trust and I purchase keys from myself. But let's return to our regularly scheduled programming. So before anything, we do have to talk about the fact that yes, there is a lot here when it comes to the Greenskin characters. I don't imagine that we'll get a big rework once again, like a rework for the rework. The only race that really needs a massive overhaul is likely the Ogres. The Greenskins are generally fine. But before you get angry, I can already feel you starting to type. I would love to see, and I would hope that Creative Assembly are thinking about this, some minor reworks for the individual characters. Very similar to what they did for the Empire, fixing up Karl Franz and Balthasar Gelt, for example, as it would be nice to get a little bit more love, something better for Skarsnik, a bit more incentivization for the whole 8 peak scenario, something unique for WAAAGH would be great too, and the same thing would go for Grimgor and Azag. Yes, it would be a bit more work, but I'm not saying reinvent the wheel. Kind of just copy-paste from other factions, give them a minor mechanic to give them something fun. And I'm saying this because the Empire touch-ups were incredible. I really enjoy playing Gelt right now, and I'm having a lot of fun with Franz where he feels a lot more unique. I would love to see this eventually happen down the line to basically every Lord that is still very much vanilla, because replayability is quite important, especially when it comes to a faction or, well, just the game in general. There is so much diversity in terms of races. It would be great to have replayability with all the individual factions within said races. Now, I'm imagining that the Greenskins would get content very similar to that of Thrones of Decay, so, you know, Lord and Hero choice, a bunch of units, usually around 5 or 6, and a character here. It would have been better, in my opinion, once again, if it was like a Champions of Chaos situation, because then we would have gotten all the different types of Greenskins that are missing, because, believe me, there are a lot, and I mean a lot, of orcs and goblins and just so many things missing for the Greenskins. But this is what happens when you've got a race which is very similar to that of the Warriors of Chaos in terms of you're missing this, you're missing that. Maybe Creative Assembly want to be like really fun with us and like go, yeah, we're just going to add in everything, which would be awesome. Which, by the way, I would imagine maybe they could do that, because we don't want to see the 100th Legendary Lord being potentially Skulltaker. It'd have to be someone really, really big. So maybe in this case they could go, instead of a Legendary Lord as a FLC Legendary Lord, you're just going to get a shit ton of units. Which I wouldn't be opposed to. I know some people are already complaining about that in the video, but I'm generally not opposed to. Now we're going to start talking about possible legendary characters. In my opinion, we should have a Forest Goblin Legendary Lord. Why, you may ask? Well, that would give us one of every subculture of the main Greenskins book. It would be kind of cool to see that, as, yeah, I mean, I love Forest Goblins, I know they're not the most popular, but there's a possible character there with Snaggler Grobspit. He never really had a model, but he had rules in 8th edition. Essentially, he's in the Old World too. It's in that area right next to Middenheim. which they'd probably move him away if that's the case, because let's be honest, you don't need that many greenskins in that location. But the other greenskins would be in the Badlands anyway. But yeah, he's a spider rider who very devoutly follows the greenskin spider god, because the forest goblins actually don't worship Gork and Mork as their principals. They still do, but the main focus is the spider god that speaks to them directly. Also, they think it could just be a little bit of mushrooms coming in and, you know, having a little bit of fun with them. This character would focus very heavily on spider units. We'd probably get access to the generic spiders that you can already get during WAAAGH also, but you can't recruit normally. It would be very cavalry focused, I'd say, because obviously the spiders. It would be kind of cool if they just decided for fun, you know, let's add in some forest goblin units too. So you'd get a bunch of different type of goblins, have them just go insane. This faction would focus a lot on heavy ambushing fights, which you can kind of do with the Night Goblins, but this would be more like the Skaven do, because it's actually fairly well known that the Spider Riders in his command essentially do some weird guerrilla warfare and basically take out all the huntsmen that go in through the Drakwold Forest. I would love to see forest goblins. I know it's likely not going to be an eventuality, but representation is kind of key here, right? More than likely, we could see another character, which would likely be either Gorbad Ironclaw on the left or Gorfang Rotgut in the right. Gorfang is actually technically in-game, because he's mentioned a lot, and like there is a character called Gorfang, it just doesn't have a unique model, but both of these are well-known characters. Obviously, Gorbad Ironclaw being the Boar Rider known for being a tactical genius, having destroyed Solent, and kind of just disappearing from there. He's a very well-known character. He's known for using everything. I know a lot of people kind of disputed the fact of the cavalry stuff, but he's also very heavily known to use some cavalry, making use of boar riders, spider riders, wolf riders, anything that you could ask for, really. Whereas Gorfang Rotgut is the actual leader of Black Crag. So right now it's owned by the Skaven, but in Warhammer 1 and Warhammer 2 it was owned by Grimgor. But yeah, actually Gorfang Rotgut came in, took it over, and basically just hunkered down. He fought against a bunch of Skaven and a lot of dwarves too. He is hated heavily by both. Both of these are great fighters, and I love them both. I mean, Gorbad Ironclaw is probably one of my favorite models, to the point that I have recently stripped down the metal model to repaint it for use in the old world. But, like I said, I would prefer the Forest Goblin because it's something a little bit different. I'm not opposed to any character coming in, I'm just happy that the Greenskins are getting some love, but again, should have been like a Champions of Chaos style DLC. Now, the big part of confusion here is what they could actually do for Lords and Heroes. You see, we do have a little bit of everything, but we are just missing out on variety. We, for example, have the Orc War Boss, but we don't have the Black Orc War Boss, right? Or a Orc Shaman Lord. The Orc Shaman Lord being useful, this is what I'm saying, right? If we go into the unit roster where you see a fair amount of them alongside the characters too, there is so many possible Lord and Hero options that we're currently missing. I would say getting a Shaman Lord would probably be the most beneficial, as that would give us access to some bigger lore of magic as a Lord option. Some people do like that. And then for a hero, I mean, we could have something like... I would love to have a Savage Orc Lord and Hero. That's the main thing that I would love, you know? A Night Goblin Big Boss could come in here. Again, perfect world, we'd see everything. And I would love to, but I very much doubt that a faction DLC, which is going to feature 2 other factions, which will give us everything that we want. I'm coming in with an edit here because this is what's missing for the Lords and Heroes, as I know some people would be quite curious. So yeah, let's get started. Savage Orc War Bosses, Black Orc War Bosses, Orc Great Shamans, Savage Orc Great Shamans, Goblin War Bosses, Night Goblin Great Shamans, I believe also. That was for the Lords. And then for the Heroes, we've got Orc Big Bosses, Savage Orc Big Bosses, Savage Orc Shamans, so generic hero, Goblin Shamans, Night Goblin Big Bosses too. There's quite a few things missing. And yeah, I mean, you can see that it would just be nice to have, right? Now, we're going to start looking towards the units, and the units themselves, well, those will likely be big centerpieces because, again, missing loads of variants, but there's a lot of big centerpiece units that we're currently missing, which would be a big reason for people to buy. I mean, the first thing that we can talk about is the Colossal Squig, right? This is a squig, but huge. I know that might not sound too exciting, but what this would give you is something with the mobility of a squig, but also the destructive power of a rogue idol. It would move around fairly quickly for what it does, and do a lot of damage. Squigs are cute and adorable, everyone loves squigs. Having a really big one would just be kind of easy for them to make because the same basic rig would be there. It would obviously be expanded upon and then fixed up here and there, and then just new animations to make it its own thing, or adapting the current animations that you get from the standard squigs, because they would fight in a very similar way. It's literally just a normal squig, just supersized. A lot of people actually ended up buying the Colossal Squig when it came out for Forge World. Well, it was Warhammer Forge back then. God, feeling old again. But yeah, it was actually fairly popular, because I remember when I tried to buy it, it was out of stock. And this was before the stock issue started happening with Games Workshop and all the scalper stuff. It is an iconic model. I have one myself, and it's just like, it's adorable. It's essentially a paperweight. It doesn't have any rules in the old world, but it's still one of these ones that you kind of want to see because it just looks fun, right? And big monsters like that, again, squigs being squigs, who doesn't love them? You love them in Age of Sigmar too, you love them in 40k, you love them in fantasy. They're just the best. And you know what? We're going to keep talking about squigs. I should have honestly just put a counter here, just how many times I've said squig throughout the video. But this is the Squig Gobber. So this is something that eventually did get rules, but not at the very beginning at the release of Warhammer Fantasy. It was kind of like a supplement thing, but yeah, it's an artillery piece. I know some people are like, wait, what? It's like, yeah, they shot squigs at people. It's not a Colossal Squig, it's just its own thing. I love them. It is such an iconic model too. God, I just love Greenskin stuff because they were just so silly. It's actually a big reason as to why I've been toying with making the Orcs and Goblins, the Greenskins, as my main for Old World, believe it or not. But yeah, we could see this as shooting exploding squigs, and that gives you a mortar essentially. Well, a cannon, more or less. What I would like to see if this does get implemented is removing the crew, so no night goblins on it. So if you run out of ammunition, then it just turns into a smaller version of the Colossal Squig. So it's still there to do a decent amount of damage. I feel like that would be quite helpful, because one of the problems that I've seen with the Goblin here, for example, is that it shoots its load, and then it's not really good at melee, barring like the crew being unbreakable. It should have also been doing some damage in melee. So I would love to see the Squid Gobber come in and just still be decent after firing as much as it's got, right? And we're going to keep on talking about squigs. This is the thing, the most of the missing units are squigs. So these are the Mangler squigs, and essentially what they are is, I guess you can kind of call them very similar to that of a Chaos Spawn in a sense, because of how they work on the tabletop. But yeah, they were unit killers, right? They would go around very much like Fanatics, but you could control them, and they would just do a lot of damage. Essentially just big unit killers. They're also back for the Old World too. They're very, very cool. And honestly, I see them as, there's a possibility of bringing these in to have something that kind of moves randomly, not so randomly that you wouldn't be able to control them, but they would have access to like Rampage too, which would make them be a bit unreliable, but it kind of fits with what they do. I really think that this would be kind of cool. If they just want to add in this, I'm starting to think, oh, well, what if they end up doing some random OC Night Goblin character, because squigs are very associated with them. But yeah, it would just be a larger squig that would just move around, do a lot of damage, lots of armor piercing damage, especially like even how they're working in the Old World right now is -3 armor piercing, which is fucking insane, let me just tell you that. They literally rip apart Chaos Warriors. But yeah, I mean, it would be cool. And there's some other stuff that isn't squigs, but I'm telling you what, after I finish this video, I'm actually just going to go start painting up a squig or two, because, yeah, I've said this word way too many times. Now, when we start going to other missing units, there's literally not a lot of missing stuff, but yeah, I mean, the Spear Chucker is a thing. Essentially, yeah, it's a bolt thrower. I know it's not the most interesting type of thing, but a lot of people do find that unit to be very nice memories. Because, you know, back in the day, they used to do a decent amount of damage if you were lucky. They could do a lot of damage to hordes. Not against it. If they want to add in a Spear Chucker, that would be kind of cool, because it would be large. It would be great for shooting down monsters if you obviously get the hit in, but they're not too unreliable. Plus, for the sake of completionism, I mean, why not, right? I'd rather have as many options as possible, even if I'm not going to use them myself, because while I might not use them and you might not use them, someone else will. So it's always better to have that variety than nothing. And then the last unit would be Snotlings. So this is a swarm unit. We already had the pump wagons, but Snotling swarms were a thing in the tabletop. They still are, by the way, in Old World 2. And it's kind of sad, because Creative Assembly actually made this big hullabaloo about it when they introduced the Nurgling swarms, that they have brand new swarm tech, and yet they haven't really used it since then. So it would be nice to see what they could do with that new tech that's only been used once and see how it would work with Snotlings, which wouldn't be like going on top of each other and turning into big monsters and stuff like that. They're just a little bit of a horde. Again, not the most interesting unit, but I feel like some people would go, oh my god, Snotlings, yay, you know? Because it's one of those things. I've seen it before. This final unit, I don't know if it will actually ever end up in game, so I'm not holding my breath, despite the fact that I love Savage Orcs. This is the Big Stabber. And essentially, it was a unit upgrade in a very similar sense to how well, a lot of stuff like the weapons teams for the Skaven were actually more unit upgrades for the clan rats than they were their own thing. But yeah, a Big Stabber was used by 2 Savage Orcs, a giant log with a stone attached to it, and it would take down enemies by doing damage, you know, it was impact hits and so on. This could be kind of cool to see it implemented, but I just really don't know how they could make this a unique unit without being utterly useless. Because they're not going to run fast and so on. I mean, it could be great as a monster killer, but they would be extremely situational. Plus, if memory serves, some factions actually got like a few less units in Thrones of Decay, so I imagine that they're going to go full squig, and then Snotlings and the Spear Chucker, they don't really see a reason to add it in. Again, I would love to see it, but even I think, well, the Big Stabber doesn't really fit too much unless they can find a really cool way to do it. So there's a few things that we need to talk about here, like for example, the missing mount options, right? There are mounts which are in game, like for example, I think the Wolf Chariot is in game and only in multiplayer, which is kind of weird. So yeah, there's a bunch of missing chariot mounts which would be lovely to see implemented into the game. Some that are already in and some that aren't, but just require like a character swap. Like literally, I've tested it out. Modding it takes like 2 seconds. They would be free, obviously. You wouldn't have to pay for this, but, you know, if Creative Assembly want to be nice, it's about time to start implementing these missing variants. Now, for a legendary hero, I could imagine them going with Gatilla the Hunter, mostly because, yeah, it just kind of makes sense. So, it's a Wolf Rider, very similar to that of Gordo's Backstabber, though this one uses a bow, and it would buff up Wolf Riders. You'd be able to have a lot of fun with that. I know it's not the most interesting character, but it could fit well, and it's the only character that I don't see having its own, like, faction, right? Believe it or not, we have a generic goblin already, which is Grom the Paunch, so having a basic kind of mercenary style character would be cool as a legendary hero. It would give you a reason to use a lot more goblins, a more skirmishy focused army and so on, which is again why mount options would be very, very cool, CA. But yeah, I mean, I think this is the best choice. Maybe you guys find a better one. Obviously, I'm just going by the 8th edition rulebook. I could go like a bit further back, but this one just kind of fits the most to me, I think. Alright, we're going to talk about the missing variants, and this is why, again, I've mentioned the whole, this should have been like a Champions of Chaos style DLC for the Greenskins, because as you can see, and this is a link to the Steam community page, it's something that's been going on for a while apparently, thank you to my Discord community for pointing that out. There are stupid amounts of variants for the Greenskins that are still missing, so Orc Boys with spears, Orc Boys with hand weapons, Savage Orcs, just a lot of them, which I would love to see personally. Some Night Goblin units that are missing too, some Night Goblins with spears and shields would be great, because they're stupidly iconic, because that was the Skull Pass pack, right, which I've recently opened my 4th and final one. Yeah, I'm finally working on my Night Goblins. It's going to take a while. But yeah, there's so many units. And again, we have stuff that kind of does the same thing. But this is why I said that the Orcs and Goblins are very similar to that of the Warriors of Chaos, where you've got so much variety because you've got loads of subcultures where you've got so much going for it. In a perfect world, we'd see it all. In a perfect world, we'd just see so many things being added in, which would be so stupidly fun, because that means that you could tailor your armies exactly the way you have it. There's, of course, mods that do that, right? Like, there's a bunch of Orc mods like We Special and so on, but I know that some people do like them officially, too. Before we end this video, we do have to talk about the tinfoil hat theory, where some people are thinking that maybe we could see the Hobgoblin Carnate come in. I very much doubt it. I mean, it's still in the realm of possibility, but it would require a little bit more work than an average Lord pack, and I don't think that Creative Assembly are in that position right now to, like, give something out for free. It would be a shame, because it would be really, really cool to see. We did have a free race pack back in Warhammer 1, but not for Warhammer 2. I don't think it needs to be a full race pack. It could just be like a sub-faction, and there you go. Especially since the framework for Hobgoblins is done, considering that there's a lot of Hobgoblins in the Chaos Dwarfs. I know a lot of people have been talking about this very heavily, but I just don't see it happening. It would be cool to see in the future. Hell, for some reason, you could imagine like the 100th Legendary Lord ending up being a Hobgoblin for free. Be a bit lost there. It should be someone fairly big, but, you know, there's always a possibility. But that being said, I think what we've discussed in this video is pretty realistic on what to expect for the Greenskins. It doesn't have to be too big because they are functionally done. They are very, very well done at the moment. The rework was quite good. There's a few issues there, but it's mostly with the AI. So a few fixes here and there could sort that out. It's just nice to see the Greenskins get a bit of attention. It does give me some hope that some factions that might be, you know, currently ignored will get some eventually. You know, Norska, the Vampire Counts. The Tomb Kings could do with something too. The Tomb Kings are also functionally done. They could do with a little DLC pack though. But let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Start a bit of discussion. I do apologize that this comes out a little bit late. I did go out last night and yeah, I didn't finish the video until today. So that's always fun. Once again, a big thank you to Instant Gaming for the sponsor. It does really help the channel out, especially right now as I am trying to upgrade my machine. As you guys know, my SSD did break, so little sponsorships like that do help me keep solvent, which is always great. Until then, guys, have a great day, and I'll see you all again very, very soon.